This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Financial Adventures Balanced Life Coaching Programs. Financial Adventures Balanced Life Coaching Programs are built for high-stress professionals like accountants who are busy with their careers and have a hard time accomplishing what they truly want in their lives. By utilizing the five-step process in the Balanced Life Coaching Programs, you will receive strategy, mentorship, and coaching with a dedicated growth coach to intentionally create the life you desire. You will clarify exactly what you want in your life, create solutions for achieving your goals, and focus on them 30 days at a time in a format that is most convenient for you. You will not only achieve your goals, but you will also increase your sense of purpose, self-satisfaction, and lead a more fulfilling life. What is one thing you would like to improve in your life? What is it costing you by not having a coach help you get what you want in your life? You can learn more about these programs or sign up for a free consultation at financialadventure.com. And while you are there, subscribe to the private podcast for high stress professionals at financialadventure.com/private. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary D. Hart. I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant and the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My guest today is Roman Kepczyk. Roman you're a CPA, right? I have that
Yes,
written down in my notes. So
CPA,
Roman,
CITP.
there we go. He's got them all. And are you still director of firm technology with Rightworks, or you have a different title? That is the title?
Firm technology strategy,
Okay.
which is basically a fancy term that I'm an outsourced IT partner to accounting firms.
Okay.
And that's my primary role, is going into firms. And I'm a Lean Six Sigma consultant, so I really spend a lot of my time focused on process, tax production process, audit automation, those kind of things. But as you know, security has become top of mind across every industry, and in particular ours.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to talk about, your 5 tips on securing firms, securing accounting firms, and then a little touch on CES. But before we dive into that, just share a little bit just about Rightworks. What is Rightworks? And I know you guys have had some acquisitions over the past 2 years that have, I don't know if, from the outside, it seems like it might change the face of Rightworks a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Rightworks, pretty much overall, we're like the leading cloud hosting provider solution to the accounting profession. What that means is originally Rightworks, which was called Right Networks before, was the largest host of QuickBooks desktop in the country, with over 200,000 seats in that area alone, pretty much providing remote access to people in a very secure environment. One of the acquisitions they made was Eccentric, which is how I came into it, which was a cloud hosting company focused exclusively on very complex CPA firms, those with mixed suites of Thomson Reuters, CCH, Intuit, Lacerte, Drake, all these different products. And we brought it into a secure bucket, basically, so they could run everything, whether it was on-prem software or cloud software, through one secure infrastructure. And so pretty much Rightworks also acquired Rootworks, which was Darren Root's association of, I think, like 900 CPA firms, doing everything from their website to internal management productivity. And so overall, we're pretty much a company focused exclusively on the accounting profession, and our cloud infrastructure and tools are purpose-built specifically for CPAs. We call it one space. You come to one space to do all of your work, and we make sure it's secure, that you get the training behind it and everything, just so you can focus on servicing your clients, and we take care of everything in the background.
Gotcha. And any of the Eccentric guys still there?
Oh yeah, lots of us. Yeah. All of us, Robert Prusa and I and Monty and Aaron, just it's the same crew pretty much.
Right. Okay. So let's dive in. Do you want to talk about CES first? Or you want to talk about 5 tips of securing a firm?
Well, let's talk about security first, because I think that's more, as we get into busy season, it's top of mind right now.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. So 5 tips. How do I secure my firm outside? And we're not talking about double deadbolting the door, right?
No, well, the first thing we got to make sure is that you continue your education through busy season. What I mean by that is everyone knows that during tax season, we're stressed out, we're trying to get work done, get it out. Well, the hackers know that too. And they know that particularly as we get close to the deadlines, we can be tired. We can try to be a little bit more trying to get things done out there. And so they send phishing emails specifically to say, hey, Gary, here's my last document. Can you take a look at it? Or I need to get this done. Or they might have a question that goes to a link, or it's basically trying to get you to either click on a link or do some kind of action that compromises your information or downloads data into it. So, phishing has become uber sophisticated since the hackers have got into the game with artificial intelligence.
Mm.
And so, the Nigerian prince scams of the past with misspellings and all the garbage, they run their phishing emails through generative AI solutions. So they can sound like, okay, I'm an accountant, write a phishing email to do this specifically. And it has no misspellings. It has very clear, concise language. And you got to remember, it's just the whole goal is to trick you into clicking on a link or doing something.
Yep.
And as they learn phishing emails that work, they actually spread that information to all their peers, and then we're out there. So security awareness training is critical. And so that training and reminders that if one of your people clicks on a type of phishing email or something, educate and notify all the other people in your firm of that. And so that's what we do actually. Rightworks, we actually provide specific security awareness training for accountants because
Okay.
we know that's all we do. Our whole goal is we're purpose built for the accounting profession. And so everything we do our training on is targeted towards that. And that leads actually to the second tip,
Okay.
which pretty much is making sure that only authorized people to get into the system and the network. And so when we talk about access controls, we all think about passwords. Well, a study done by AT&T last year said like 44% of us reuse our passwords. Well, when a hacker knows your password or they breach, let's say, one site, they have automated tools now that can actually put your login and password in multiple sites into similar types of businesses. In the accounting profession, we have the big three providers plus a lot of ancillary. But as an example, let's say that you have a Hilton Honors account and Hilton gets breached. Well, the hackers will use a tool to do basically send that into all of the other hotel chains, all of the airport chains, all of the similar types of websites. And that's actually what happened to the Colonial Pipeline breach.
Okay.
That it's called credential stuffing, where one of the websites that an energy consultant was using got hacked, and he used the same login and password on all of them. So basically, he just went out there. Once he got breached, the hackers were able to get into Colonial Pipeline and cause the damage that they did there. So what firms can do to protect themselves is, make sure you have a unique password to every single login. We also found that more complex passwords are harder to breach by the hackers. So the recommendation today is at least 14 characters, and we're actually going up to towards 20 if that site will accept that. And they need to be very complex, preferably words that don't exist in the English language, usually a combination of characters, letters, special stuff like that. And so the best way to manage that, we recommend the use of password wallets and multi-factor authentication. So password wallets, there's tools like 1Password, Dashlane, Keeper. And what these tools do is allow you, by putting in one master password, which is usually a 20 character or longer password that you remember. That is, that you never write it down anywhere, but you can remember it. It can be a passphrase, which could be song lyrics, could be part, a phrase you use all the time. But once you have that password, it'll generate a complex password that is really ugly and impossible to guess to every single login you do. And every one of those logins should be unique. And so pretty much between having a unique password, a password wallet, and then the last item there that we think is mandatory is multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
And that is usually through your tax software or through someone like a Rightworks, where pretty much you have to authenticate when you log in any site. It actually sends a prompt to your phone or your tablet that you have to verify it is you who's connecting to that. And then the last component of that, we really think as far as system access controls, this kind of ties into the education, which was number one, is develop what we call a zero trust mindset. And what that means is train your people that, I mean, the artificial intelligence can actually emulate your voice and your face now. And so when someone tries to connect or you try to connect to a data resource, just assume that they're trying to hack you and always verify, authenticate in some way. And this is just as important, actually getting into step number three, when we collaborate with our clients. And what I mean by that is, COVID forced us all to go 100% digital. Back and forth, everything is going through either a secure portal, a VPN, some kind of email solution that's out there. Well, when you're transacting with clients, make sure they use your system and only your system. What we found that there's some really good modern portals out there that allow any necessary staff member to get into it, but it allows for the transfer of data as well as communication tools out there. But part of that collaboration is everything has to be electronic, it has to be secure, and these secure solutions actually will verify that a document does not have antivirus or viruses in it, excuse me. It'll test it and open it before it allows you to get access to it. So that is very important as well. And then the collaboration component that a lot of the consultants forget to train on is remind your employees that anytime a client requests a change of any financial information in their QuickBooks file, in their banking accounts, any kind of transfers, because a lot of our firms do CAS, client accounting and advisory services.
Right.
So they're doing weekly payrolls, monthly financials, they're reconciling accounts. Anytime there's a change in any data that's confidential password, you have to use a secondary means of verification. And what I mean by that is if I email you and say, hey, I got a new account number, from my bank, you need to verify it with a phone call or a text, but it needs to be a secondary means that you control as the accountant. That is absolutely mission critical. The next thing is making sure you keep all of your, what I'll call it, security governance, and that's the updating of all of your policies and training to make sure that it is current that's out there, that you have adequate cyber insurance and that you are covered for it. One of the scariest things now is, a lot of the firms have ransomware insurance, they have cyber insurance, but if they get breached, they find out they're not covered because they didn't follow all the rules and the requirements that are out there. And some of them are actually requiring now, the IRS started this year, actually made it mandatory that we all have a WISP or a written information security plan. And if you do not have that, it actually gets them off the hook if you're breached.
Right.
Yeah, so actually Rightworks acquired a company called Tech for Accountants, specifically because they provide a very structured process for firms to create a written information security plan, to populate it, to know what questions to ask, and to know what coverage that you need to get out there. And so that was tip number 4. Tip number 5 basically is make sure you have a professionally managed security infrastructure. I've been an outsourced IT partner for almost 450 firms. And when I go in and I meet with the IT group, I meet with the IT team and I go through finding out what their internal information security infrastructure is. And what I find is most of the firms that do their own IT are woefully understaffed, first of all. And during busy seasons, they focus, getting the tax stuff going, keeping people working, printers, scanners, all of that. Security tends to fall down the list and gets pushed off. Sometimes even they forget to do backups, or they do backups, but they don't verify those kind of backups and all that. And so what we recommend all firms do is, when I go into a firm, I'll ask, how much time do you spend on security training? It's usually very little. How much time do you get allocated to do security on a weekly basis, that kind of stuff? It's when they have free time.
Right.
And that is not acceptable today. And so even if you manage your own network infrastructure, going to a third-party managed security provider who understands the accounting profession and all the external links and collaboration that you do, but is also aware of your entire IT infrastructure and does all the maintenance and updates on not only the server software and the structure for your routers and all of that, but also verifies that your remote devices, remote workers, tablets, smartphones, all these things are updated. They have the latest antivirus, automatically updated. They have the latest operating systems because, there's a thing called zero-day vulnerabilities, and that's when the hackers know that there's a weakness in Windows. It could be a weakness in Microsoft Office or Exchange. It could be a weakness in the router you have at home. If you have a netgain router, that kind of stuff, whatever. But as soon as they know that weakness, they have automated tools to go out there and push, their malware into it.
Right.
So doing it once a month is not adequate. You need to have a team managing it. And I think last year there was only over 2,000 known vulnerabilities, that kind of thing. So we recommend local companies that manage their own networks to go with a managed security provider who does all of that for you, who does your security, your infrastructure, and all that. We personally feel everyone should end up being in the cloud, particularly, since COVID, where everyone had remote employees or was hiring people offshoring. You need to have a very secure infrastructure that's managed 7/24 by a team, an enterprise level team. And so that's something that Rightworks has built. We have depth of personnel that are covering it. We have expansion during busy season, particularly for our CPA firm clients that
Right.
are in there. And there's just no replacement for having someone who has that, like I said, enterprise class team who can actually respond in the event of a breach. And in most cases, stop it before it spreads. Yeah, we have situations all the time where people will email us and say, unfortunately, I clicked on a malware thing. I know it. The beauty of having everything in the cloud is we can pretty much shut down that workstation, put the person on another computer to log in and do
Yep.
work, and then we can sanitize that workstation, get it ready to go back into production again.
So I don't even know if there's like a rule of thumb as far as investment wise. Is there a dollar amount you point to, or is it based on your head count, or how does a firm even start thinking, okay, I need to put X dollars into security? Because
You know what
it's
happens?
critical.
Security is so blended into everything
Yeah.
else that it's hard to break out a specific amount. For years, we've done technology budgets for firms,
Okay.
but that used to be when firms built their own networks in-house, had their own equipment in-house, and it was pretty easy because you paid for services.
Okay.
Now what happens is, let's say you use a CCH Access or Drake Cloud. Well, what happens is now the security, the disaster recovery, the backup, all those technology components are part of that licensing fee,
Okay.
so it doesn't fit in a budget anymore. So, there are a couple groups out there that will say that you should spend 5 to 7% of your production per year on technology. But what's weird is when firms go into the cloud environment, we find they cut their internal IT staff by half. And it's not the, an even half. It's usually the higher level people, because you don't need a high level network administrator. You don't need a strategist. You don't need a high level security outsourced
Yep.
company. That's all part of that plan. So when firms go to the cloud, they reduce their staff and their cost. And basically they get by with, we call them a box opener, a person who's there to help you plug in a computer, a printer, fix a scanner, change that kind of stuff.
Right. And so I'm going to wind back to I think it was number two, where you talked about the passwords and the wallets. I think you mentioned three different ones. What were the ones that you guys rely upon?
Well, what happens is, we look at all the surveys that are out there. I do a big survey through CPFMA. And so in the medium and larger size firms, the most common three we see are 1Password, the number one password, Dashlane, and Keeper. Now, if you look at other surveys out there with smaller firms, like if you have some practitioners that are 10 members or less, there are groups that use like Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator. But the key here again is having a good IT person who can set it up for you securely and properly so your people use it properly. Okay.
Right.
So it's the same thing with like VPNs. VPNs are great, but you need to make sure they're set up properly so your people know how to use them and make
Right.
sure they're actually turned on.
Yeah. And using them appropriately is the
Yep.
key, it sounds like. So,
Well,
okay.
and particularly like when you have a person who goes out to a client site, what happens is we're all getting the auditors for years have connected to the client's Wi-Fi. Well, how do you know that client's Wi-Fi has not been compromised and has a keyboard logger?
Right.
So we recommend you utilize the VPN before you connect to it, so that any login and password you do isn't breached. And I personally never use client Wi-Fi. I always use the mobile hotspot inside of my phone. That's the most secure because all transactions are encrypted. But sometimes it is a little bit slower.
Right.
But the reality is if I have to learn to use one thing and I use it all the time, I use it the right way. If I only use a VPN once in a while or I change it every time and go back and forth, I could inadvertently, turn it off without knowing it. So we recommend firms use the mobile hotspot, pay a stipend for your employee to use their own mobile hotspot inside their phone, just because it's a more secure remote connection.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So increase the diligence on and security awareness
Absolutely.
and access. So if you are on the phone with somebody and they said, "What's the one thing I must absolutely do today?" What would it be?
I think having that secure connection into the system, that was the first one, or the second one we talked about,
Yeah.
was that make sure you have complex, unique passwords, that you use multi-factor authentication in a secure single sign-on
Yeah.
environment. That would be, I think, my number one thing. And then training for me is, what we find is the breach most often is an employee who just inadvertently gets conned. And like I
Right.
said, with this increased sophistication, I think ongoing awareness and training, which that's one of the things that gets dropped during, the busy season.
Right. Oh, one other question actually, and that's around, and then we'll hop over to CES because I want to be
Yeah.
respectful of your time. And that is, do you find is email the primary culprit? I mean, is this where most of the problem is coming from? It's from clicking on a link in an email, or are you saying it's from going to websites or what have you?
Uh, the individual breaches are most often specifically to email, phishing
Okay.
emails, or there's phishing is when it's an email, smishing is when it's a text message. So
Mm,
they can do all the same things in text message. If you don't recognize someone texting you something, just delete it.
right.
A new one is vishing, voicemail phishing. And what that is if I have 20 seconds of us talking, and I learn how your inflection is, I can sound exactly like you. And there's tools off the shelf that are free. And then a new one is QR code phishing. So people are putting fake QR codes over other QR codes. Like think about how many times you go to a restaurant
Right.
and you during COVID we put our phone over to take a photo. Well, that is so easy to fake the site and everything. And as soon as you click on it and you download the menu, you've downloaded the malware. So I don't want to make your readers or audience all paranoid.
Right. Everybody's like,
Don't use
ah.
QR coding. Don't respond to email. Go directly to the website or phone. When you call a client back, don't respond to the email that's on the phone or the phone number. Actually, go to the phone number you know is correct and
Right.
call them. And if you feel something suspicious, this is one of the red flags that it doesn't seem right. Say, hey, I have an emergency right now. Let me call you right back. And if they say, "Oh, I'm not at my number there," you say,
Right.
"Well, I need to verify this, and it's in our best interest, the two of
Yeah.
us, to make sure it's secure."
Gotcha. And then you said it was vishing, and what was this, the text one?
It's smishing, small message phishing.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
So it's phishing, smishing, vishing, voicemail,
Yeah.
and QR code is quishing. And it's all being optimized with artificial intelligence tools like you would not believe. That's the crazy thing, is that the hackers are very sophisticated organizations. It's not the person in the grandma's basement, that kind of thing. They are
Right.
they are criminal organizations designed to steal your money. And if you get hacked, and your data gets exfiltrated, they will sell it to other people and they'll auction it off no matter what. So even if you pay the ransom, unfortunately, your data will be sent out. I mean, the likelihood of that being protected is pretty much zero.
Right.
You know,
Wow.
there,
Yeah. Right now, I'm in Fulton County, the Atlanta area, and they've got an issue they're dealing with from several months ago, but it's big news around here because and their systems were very, very old
yeah.
and I guess super vulnerable. So, all right,
Well, and
let's
when people
bounce.
pay the
Yeah.
ransomware,
Right.
oftentimes they hit them again. 80% of the people get hit twice because they leave a back door in there. So the FBI recommends not paying the ransomware.
uh, just rebuilding. So, which goes to what you guys do, and that is if you have a good strong defense on the front end, right, with data backup on the
Regular
back end,
backups. Yep.
and then if you've got the backup, then at any given point in time you can rebuild, right?
Yep.
So,
And that's something for the listeners that have their own network that are not in the cloud. They should be doing hourly shadow copies. That means you only can lose 1 hour work. And usually they have
wow,
inside their infrastructure to a small network attached device, but every night that all the backups have to go to the cloud to protect it because once the ransomware will lock up everything inside your network, including the NAS, the network attached storage device.
okay, all right. I say we were going to go to one to CES, but I still have one more question, and
Of
this is
course.
so I listened to this. I'm a small firm. Where do I start? I'm like, this, well, one, I probably don't have the budget for it. This is overwhelming. I can't do this. I'm in the middle of tax season. So where do I start to harden my systems?
Well, what happens is um, going with a managed security provider,
Yep.
someone who is not just a person that's been doing your IT for 20 years and works out of their, out of their home. You need to have someone who is professional grade, enterprise level, who can evaluate your infrastructure and lock this system down.
Yep.
And what we're seeing is a lot of the older networks and all that require significant upgrades and maintenance. And so most people, once they do the analysis, end up going to a secure cloud provider. And there are lots of cloud providers out there. We encourage people to go to those that focus specifically on the accounting profession because they need to understand the unique needs of updates during tax season.
Right.
The reality is you need to have 7/24 coverage, particularly the last 6 weeks of busy season. But they need to understand that you still have to update tax software 2 or 3 times a week. And that's what is unique to the accounting vendors. And like I said, Rightworks, I believe, we're 10 times larger than the next competitor out there, just because that's all we do. I mean, our whole thing is being purpose built for the accounting profession. That's all we serve. We don't do a bunch of other industries
Right.
because it's hard to be a master to 3 or 4 different industries, but we are really good at accounting.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So CES, Consumer Electronics Show, you've been going there for how many years?
Oh, it's been probably 25 years. I started off at going to Comdex, the computer show, and then
Okay.
CES
Yeah.
took over that. And it's the annual gathering of this year, I think there was 170,000 people from around the world to release the latest gadgets, equipment, technology, which of course includes office technology and home technology
Mhm.
that is used to access the office. And that's one of my big roles, is identifying what are the key trends that are most likely to evolve and become inside of the accounting profession.
Okay. And so what did you see? What was the biggest trend that's going to impact us directly? And then the one you were telling me about in the green room, kind of the most interesting, we'll
Yeah.
call it that.
Well, of course, artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI, being built into everything. But we all hear about ChatGPT and generative AI being that thing. But there's also something called narrow intelligence, which is scripted intelligence, kind of like your Siri, like Google, like those kind
Okay.
of things. And so the biggest change I've seen in hardware in 30 years was the Microsoft keyboard that we've all gotten used to that has the little Microsoft window next to the Alt key.
Yeah.
Well, this year, they're putting a Copilot key. And Copilot is Microsoft's brand of using generative AI inside of not only Windows, but also in their Bing, used to be called Bing Chat, now it's called Bing Copilot. And
Okay.
then the Microsoft Office, which is now called Microsoft 365, that we use for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, they have integrated Copilot into each one of those. And so what that means is if you use Office, the Office applications, you'll have a button on the keyboard that you click on, and it opens up the chat discussion where you say, okay, write a letter to collect this bill, and it'll do that.
Okay.
Or let's say you have a Excel spreadsheet, run a financial analysis on the top 20 metrics for this company's balance sheet and highlight the 5 most important. And it'll go through and do that. So what happens is giving us all as accountants virtual assistant capabilities, writing the first draft of a letter and all that. And what's unique about it is it can protect the data inside of your network infrastructure, basically. And so it's not being exposed to the public. And so, CES, that was probably the biggest theme. They actually started inputting what's called an NPU. So your computer will not only have a new key on the keyboard, it'll have what's called a neural processing unit specifically identified for processing the generative AI solutions. So if you don't believe AI is going to be big, the hardware and all the major providers behind it are saying this is the number one thing we're changing right now, and it's going to impact everything. And so when we talk about CES, there's also a lot of crazy gadgets out there. And I know in January you see some fun stuff, but I saw the most bizarre thing. My neighbor has a cat, and they'd sometimes talk about, the cat dragging something in, a gift you don't want. Well,
Right.
I saw a company called Flappy, and they have Flappy AI that has a camera on the cat door. So if the cat comes walking up and it has a mouse, a bird, or in Arizona, a lizard in its mouth,
Yeah.
basically it locks the door and it
That is
trains the
too
cat
funny.
that you have. And you're like, who thought this stuff up? But it just tells you that artificial intelligence is just limitless on what we can do with this. So that was very
Right.
cool. And just one crazy gadget there.
Does it reach out and like slap the lizard out of the cat's
No,
mouth?
no, it just looks at it and it waits for it to drop it.
Like,
But when you see this happen, you're going like,
that is crazy.
so, like you think about all of us when we do the CAPTCHA, like when you log into something and say, okay,
Right.
there's 12 pictures with how many of them have crosswalks? Well, they train this on cats with objects in their mouth.
Right.
And they're using that. So I thought that was just bizarre, interesting. I'm not a cat owner, but I would go
Right.
like, you know what? That could be.
It's a
And
great
there's
use of
RFID.
technology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great use of technology, because I know my wife would freak. We don't have cats either, but my wife would freak out if a cat brought in anything,
A
especially
critter.
if it was
Yeah.
alive, right? Especially if
Yeah.
it's alive. So, well, that's great. Well, Roman, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate you sharing that list with us. We'll get this posted out. I'm probably going to do something just with the vishing, smishing, and quishing, and
Yeah.
do something with that immediately, because that's I had not heard of the quishing one. So that's
That the
interesting.
FBI actually did it. And I think February of last year, they said this is a trending thing that's happening.
Wow. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Can always be on our toes. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Nice meeting
And
you. And
absolutely good to see you as well. And I'm sure we will talk very soon.
yeah, and if you ever want to talk on AI or other topics, like
Yep.
my primary role is like tax automation and audit automation.
Okay. Great. All right.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
You
Roman.
take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Out of the Box Technology. Out of the Box Technology is your partner in accounting data services. With over 7,500 industry migrations performed and an expansive network of third-party integrations, a partnership with Out of the Box will augment your advisory practice and turbocharge client accounting operations. Visit outoftheboxtechnology.com/insightful-accountant to get started.